Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, June 16th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. It's summer vacation time in the school year and also on the Chiefs calendar. OTAs have concluded and training camp is about 5 weeks away. If the NFL has a downtime, this is it. So what better time to talk Chiefs with beat writer Pete Sweeney than right now? We wrap up the off-season training activities, discuss the new contract for Patrick Mahomes, the return of L'Jarius Sneed, and the Chiefs even had a trade this past week. Pete also shares what he believes are the Chiefs' most competitive position groups. And I'll conclude by telling you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports. Hello, Pete.
Hello.
I was thinking the other day when I covered the Chiefs' first Mahomes, Andy Reid Super Bowl victory, the one in Miami against the 49ers, and after we come back to Kansas City in the parade, and just how many people were so ecstatic by the Chiefs winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years, and got me thinking about the Royals a few years earlier winning the World Series, and that was Kansas City's first championship in 30 years since the Royals won it in 85. I bring this up because I thought of you this weekend when the New York Knicks won the NBA championship, and look, large market teams don't usually get a lot of sympathetic thoughts, but it had been 5 decades since the Knicks had won an NBA title. Good fans, great building. I thought about you, and I was really happy for you. It's did it feel as good as you thought it would?
It's still something where I don't think it's really clicked yet for me. Just my entire life, hometown team, just to fill people in if they're listening for the first time or new. Grew up on the East Coast, and so, of course, rooted for New York teams. And when you work as a football reporter, I mean, the truth and the reality is, and sometimes fans get annoyed at this, but we really don't care about the result. We have to be unbiased. We have to, share that. And I think I could still say it's been a very cool thing to be part of the first Chiefs Super Bowl. I was covering the team for another site then, and then the next two as well, and the dynasty. But this is Kansas City's dynasty, and Kansas City's become my home. But I didn't grow up with the Chiefs, right? I grew up rooting for a different team, or for anyone in the NFL now, because that's my gig. But this weekend was just a nice reminder of why we even do this, Blair. I mean, I'm sure you were a young guy, and you had your teams, and we're still fans. So, I still get to be a fan of the NBA, and it just was a ride I don't think we saw coming. It's been nice to see the Knicks actually be relevant the last few years, and they entered the tournament with a third seed, and I thought that they would perform well and maybe get to the finals. I never thought they would win the finals. I thought it would actually be OKC, and so it just was cool to FaceTime my dad. My dad was 11 when they won last, and now he's an older gentleman. I'm 37 years old. I had never seen a Knicks championship, and so really cool. I don't think this is something that's going to be similar to the Chiefs. The NBA works a little bit differently, where it's really hard to do it again. So just trying to enjoy it as much as possible, and I think that's the bigger thing, connecting it back to this. It's moments like this and being a sports fan, I think, is what drew us to sports journalism, and it's nice to I finally have one of my teams break through and do it. And I know it means a lot to New York. Haven't liked some of the things I've seen out of New York, but the majority of Knicks fans are not like that. They've been waiting a long time, waiting a lifetime, very much similar, as you mentioned, to Kansas City Chiefs fans and how passionate they are with that team and waiting for 2019.
I'm glad you mentioned your dad. I think that's the kind of at the heart of the matter, is how sports can help bond families, and it's something you can share with family members. Even if as we grow old and we have less in common with family members, you always have your sports teams, and I'm glad you mentioned that. But let's talk some Chiefs.
Yeah.
And since the last time we had a Chiefs conversation, a few things have happened. Not the least of which was Patrick Mahomes became a richer and more secure member of the Kansas City Chiefs. His new contract extends him 2 years, right, to 2033, with it's basically an 8-year deal for $504,750,000. I wanted to make sure I got that 750,000 in there. Puts him with the Chiefs through 2033. Average annual salary $63 million. He's now the highest paid player in the NFL, as he should be.
Yeah, agreed. And this is something where, I pulled up the numbers before the contracts. I think his annual value is $45 million. And that was that got to be 14th or so, 15th in the NFL. And at a certain point, I understand everyone is overjoyed. Mahomes wants to work with the team and take some sort of discount. But you need to correct that. I mean, this is just how it goes in the NFL. And I think Mahomes has previously said, because he hasn't really spoken since the contract, but he's previously said, I owe it to my other quarterbacks in the league to continue to rise the value of the position. Now that becomes a new benchmark for some of those top tier quarterbacks. Even the middle tier quarterbacks will make more, maybe not as much as Mahomes, but make more because of this contract, because that's just the going rate, and he deserves it. And I think it always feels like, well, you would say casually, maybe to a friend that's a Chiefs fan, hey, there's no way Patrick Mahomes would ever leave Kansas City. And I think it becomes very interesting once Andy Reid is no longer his head coach. We also probably said the same thing about Tom Brady in New England, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. You can go on and on, Russ Wilson in Seattle. Even though at the time, when they're in their prime, in their early 30s, you think, okay, there's no way you could ever see a divorce between outstanding quarterback and club. You owe the diligence, not due diligence, but you owe the diligence of making sure your franchise elite quarterback remains happy. And I think that, to me, is part of this. And there really isn't anything cap-wise that is going to be different for this year, but he did keep that guarantee mechanism thing in his contract. So each and every year, the Chiefs could look at what they have and move money around, essentially. And sometimes they move a lot because they feel like they want more players to be surrounding him in his plans. And sometimes they don't pull a lot out because they feel like they have enough. And so there is that built in. And as the cap rises and as you go on, this will look like a great deal eventually, right? Because that's just kind of how it goes. And so quarterback remains satisfied. And I think that's primary objective number one when you're trying to build a champion in the NFL.
You mentioned his previous salary was an average of about $45 million. He had signed a 10-year extension in 2020, so the year after the Chiefs won the first Super Bowl, and then again in 2023 it was restructured. So this is the next sort of major contract milestone for him. I bring it up because in the previous two occasions the Chiefs were coming off a Super Bowl victory.
Right.
This time they're coming off the team's worst season, and statistically his worst season, in a year in which he was injured, couldn't finish the year with the torn ACL and LCL. So is there anything in the timing that makes this a little unusual?
Well, the Chiefs, from what I understand, we're planning on doing this next year, and they just moved it up a year early. I think if anything, right, if anyone had any worries about how they feel about structurally his knee is, I mean, there's supreme confidence, quite obviously, within the medical team that he's going to be fine and the same player, because you're not making this extension if you have any doubts about that. And look, we're not doctors, but we had an opportunity to go out for some of the OTAs, and he looks great. I mean, for right now, I'm sure there'll be more steps to take. But yeah, I think they know what they have. They know that he's going to treat his body well and give the utmost every year, which is the only reason why you sign a player and tie yourself to him until his age 38 season. And I think one thing that's worth saying here also is, I mean, you'll get to a certain point, whether it's 3-4 years down the line, where you'll probably redo it again if you feel like he wants to play to 40 or something like that. So it's never ending. It's always, I think, just trying to stay at least somewhere close to the top of the market, because and I always say this when I talk about just quarterbacks in the NFL. If you want to have a conversation with me about Josh Allen or Joe Burrow being the top quarterback, I'll listen to you. But I think objectively, you have a top 3 quarterback in the league. And so when you have that, you have to take care of it.
Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney is our guest. Okay, what was said by Andy Reid and others about Mahomes' health when training camp? But where do we think he's going to be when training camp begins in late July? And everybody wants to know, do we think he's going to be the be there healthy for the season opener.
And not to bring up Eric Berry, but we did hear the dreaded, we're taking it day by day quite a bit. And it's not exactly the same. Nothing was like that. It's almost like a joke bringing that up. But Andy Reid didn't really want to commit to any hard timeline, which to me makes sense. I mean, they're not trying to put any unnecessary pressure on Mahomes to be back by a certain date. I mean, my question to Mahomes a week prior was about when he feels like he'll be ready for 11 on 11. And I don't think he was trying to hide anything when he said, I didn't know. Because the way that they've stacked this up, I think we brought it up in previous podcasts, but just to review, like they're working on 1 to 2 week checkpoints as to, okay, you got to get to a certain point here. And so I'm not sure the Chiefs really know. What I can tell you, what I feel strongly is like they're not rushing it. It's like I think they would love Patrick Mahomes to be ready week 1, but you just sign this player till his age 38 season. You cannot risk 2 games worth of putting him out too early to get re-injured, and then all of a sudden everything is in flux. And so I think the Chiefs will be cautious with this, and I think, in my opinion, at some point during training camp, I bet you he will be a full go. We just don't know when that's going to be. I'm not sure it'll be at the beginning. Maybe it's in the middle. Maybe it's close to the end of training camp where they feel like, okay, we got to get you out there for like a 3rd preseason game, something like that. So will be interesting, but I feel good. I'll say this. I feel good about week 1, but I'm not 100% sure, just kind of based upon taking everything in.
I know you and I both said, we were speaking with our colleague Vahe Gregorian a couple of weeks ago, and we both said we thought he would be ready week 1, but that was before we heard him talk and Andy Reid's final message to the media on last week. So I'm with you on this. I guess I can equivocate a little bit on this. I'm a little less confident than I was a couple of weeks ago before hearing them, both Andy and Patrick Mahomes speak. So we'll see. I would still lean toward him suiting up for week 1.
Right. And the NFL actually, I don't know what you want to say, it's on purpose or what. They did the Chiefs a favor in putting out the last possible minute of week 1
to play. They're the last game in week 1.
So maybe they're, if it comes down to days, who knows? Maybe that extra day will help. But I like I said, I agree with you. I mean, I think we're on the same page. Before I felt no doubt, but you could hear some of the, I don't want to say trepidation, but like cautiousness in both Mahomes and Reid, and kind of saying, we're trying. We're going to do everything in our power to make this happen, but we're not going to put the quarterback in a precarious situation, which means maybe it is Justin Fields, or again, it could be Garrett Nussmeier, which is crazy to say, just based upon some of the early looks. I mean, I think those two, in my opinion, at least throwing the football, were closer than I thought they were going to be. And so, maybe you ride with whoever the backup is week 1, probably Justin Fields. I don't want to create a stir, but it was interesting to see Garrett Nussmeier and how confident he was as a 7th-round rookie.
Let's take a break, and we'll talk some more Chiefs when we get back. We're back on SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR, and we're talking Chiefs with beat writer Pete Sweeney. A couple other interesting developments over the last couple of weeks. Pete, all of a sudden, right tackle seems to be a position in a little bit of flux. Part of the reason is the Chiefs traded away Wanya Morris, who can back up swing tackle, and he was a personable guy and good locker room guy. I don't know if he was ever going to be a difference maker for the Chiefs, but they traded him to the Atlanta Falcons along with a 7th-round pick and in return a 6th-round pick in the 2027 draft. I think it's funny that the Falcons now line up on the right side with Juwan Taylor. It's your starting right tackle, and Wanya Morris is your backup over there. But where does this leave the Chiefs at right tackle? Who are the candidates, and what's going to happen at that position?
I got to imagine Jalen Moore is probably like, deep sigh, what do I got to do? I was going to be the left tackle. They draft Josh Simmons, and now Juwan Taylor moves on. It's definitely my job, right? No, maybe not.
Necessarily.
Because it seems like Esapole and Khalil Benson, an undrafted rookie with the national champion Indiana Hoosiers, is suddenly in that mix. It seems like it's a three-man race. I tend to think Chu Godric feels like outside looking in a little bit. I think the real consideration will be to Pole, to Moore, and to Benson, but those are four names. And so you think about where Wanya Morris is among them. It's probably the 11th or 12th offensive lineman on the team. And so the Chiefs, I think, did him a service. They said, okay, let's put you in a situation where at least you're a swing tackle, as a backup in some capacity, as you mentioned with Taylor there. But it just wasn't going to happen for him here. And he probably would have been cut. Trade him now, get him in a new system. You upgrade a pick from 7 to 6, and I think everyone, to an extent, wins. And don't forget, like, Wanya Morris is coming off a very serious injury himself, and so when you have three healthy candidates you feel good about, as Andy Reid alluded to in his final press conference, then I think it just is a shrewd move that really you had to make. And I think the Chiefs were actually fortunate that someone was interested. I didn't think that was a guarantee with just the way Wanya's career has gone. As you mentioned, great locker room guy, but on the field, I never felt like he was someone the Chiefs trusted to have one of those starting tackle positions.
One season he started 11 games, but they couldn't finish the season with him. They had to make it was a coach's decision move to get him off the field. So Khalil Benson, all of a sudden, you and I are standing out in practice along with some other reporters and members of the media, and the first team offensive line takes the field, and there's Khalil Benson at right tackle, and I'm thinking, what? That's the first time we'd seen that, and interesting guy. You mentioned he started his career at Indiana, played 4 years. Indiana then fired their coach. That was Tom Allen. He transferred to Colorado, was offensive lineman for Shedeur Sanders at Colorado, transfers back to Indiana in time for Curt Cignetti's team that went undefeated this year, won the national championship. They brought him back to play guard, found that he had a need at tackle, played him at right tackle, starts 12 of the 16 games, and is a member. 16 wins. The Indiana just blew through the schedule this year, beat Miami for the national championship. So interesting guy. Andy Reid was asked about him and sung his praises a little bit. We could have a real find here in Khalil Benson.
Yeah, it seems like the Chiefs at least think they could have a diamond in the rough. Andy was cautious in committing to anything. I mean, similar to some of the things that we said about the Mahomes injury, just as far as what the right tackle is going to be. But again, we sometimes have to dig things out of Coach Reid, and it really felt like he was okay and comfortable admitting, like, this is a wide open competition. And if you really look at the rest of the roster, Blair, where else is there a true competition? I mean, I guess you can make a case for cornerback opposite Mansour Delane.
And we're going to get to cornerback in a minute, but you're right. I mean, that's
to me,
true competition.
It's the number one wide open battle to me of training camp is right tackle. And why not Khalil Benson? I mean, you haven't felt 100% quite obviously confident about Jalen Moore. It feels like every opportunity they get to take Moore off the field, they've been doing it. And then you had Pole last year, who showed you a little something. That was last year's diamond in the rough. And so I think we see these guys rotate once we get to training camp. I think Jalen Moore probably gets the first crack. Andy Reid usually defers to the veteran. And very quickly, you'll see if they start rotating, and then all of a sudden you have a couple days in a row where it is Benson or it is Pole then you're starting to. Andy will never really call it, but you start to see where his mind at, because he wants these guys to get padded reps together, and that can really only happen at training camp. And look, I think he's excited about Benson, but he did say that. He's like, I got to see him with the pads on. But look, as far as college football goes, you can't really have any bigger games, and he was able to play and be effective enough to stay in the lineup. And so we'll see on him.
So that'll be one of the positions to keep an eye on at training camp in St. Joe starting next month. Another one, as you mentioned, is cornerback, and there was a new development there with the Tennessee Titans had released our old friend L'Jarius Sneed, and the Chiefs swooped him up, signed him to the roster, and he is back with the Chiefs. I loved L'Jarius Sneed as a player in his first go around the first 4 years here. Had the huge forced fumble against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game a few years ago. But it does add another player to the competition at the cornerback. So the rotation's gotten deeper. I just don't know who I think I don't know who besides Mansour Delane that I feel most strongly about starting.
Yeah, remember that exasperated sound I made for Jalen Moore? That's probably Christian Fulton right about this point.
Yeah.
Signs here and is like, man, what do I have to do to get a position?
But both big numbers, by the way, Moore and Fulton.
And like maybe the writing was on the wall for us, Blair. Like I know we like to brag about our mock drafts and how we had Mansour Delane in the first one, but it's like when you lose your two starting cornerbacks, Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson, and you have an immediate need there. And Christian Fulton was hurt, and a lot of talk around him last year was, he's injured and he was never really able to get his feet under him and learn the defense. But even when he was completely healthy, the Chiefs were choosing to have him be a healthy scratch. And so you needed more names and numbers at the position. And I feel like every training camp, this is a joke that I make, there seems to be like a clown car position where you just pile as many different players as you can and like, let's just see who the best 5 or 6 are. And that to me is cornerback. I think that your two starting cornerbacks are Mansour Delane and Noah Williams. But now you have some true competition there. And don't forget, like in today's NFL, the nickel is the base is the nickel because, it's become passing. And so you have the 3 cornerbacks on the field a lot more maybe than you have 2. And so the slot becomes interesting. The Chiefs signed Kader Kohu as a veteran option at slot, and then Jaden Kennedy.
Drafted.
And now they drafted him. And now you bring in L'Jarius Sneed, who before Trent McDuffie was like your guy that you felt like could play inside, outside, bounce around. And if he is healthy, now you're just wondering, like, what does this whole thing look like? I think the only thing you could say with precise and exact certainty is that Mansour Delane will be a starter. You don't take someone in the top 6 picks of the NFL draft.
Traded up to get him.
I don't care if he's a rookie. He'll definitely be, one of your top 2 cornerbacks. But like, who is the other guy? I think it's Noah Williams. And then when it gets to be 3 cornerbacks on the field, it just gets a lot more interesting. So Sneed does throw a curveball. Again, his big thing is going to be his health. I mean, Sam and I have kind of discussed this. We co-wrote when the Chiefs were interested again, and his knee has been a problem. I mean, he just has not been able to stay on the field. Tennessee has to have buyer's remorse from the contract they gave him. Good for him to make the money, but just never panned out. So where's his knee at? Can he actually stay on the field for training camp practice? I think that's going to be a big part of it.
Played 12 games in 2 seasons for the Titans, 5 his first year and then 7 last year. Chiefs, you could say, with a fair amount of confidence, won that trade when they sent L'Jarius Sneed over to Tennessee a couple years ago. They got a 3rd-round pick in return, used it to take Ashton Gelati. So, and now the Chiefs have L'Jarius Sneed back. I wonder what's going to happen to players like Chris Roland Wallace and Kyer Elam. Part of the mix, but...
Yeah. I think Roland Wallace feels safer than Elam. I mean, even in these OTAs, you could see that Spags sees him as a candidate for that slot position. But again, you did bring back Sneed, and you have Kohu, and you drafted candidate. Like, are you keeping 7 defensive or cornerbacks? I don't think so. I mean, there's only 5 or 6 spots for like a lot of quality players that the Chiefs are gonna like. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting position. I mean, the right tackle to me is the top battle, but if you want to have a number 2, it's cornerback, and it really isn't like an exact cornerback position. It's more like which 5 of these guys are going to stick. And just a quick point on Elam. Elam just he hasn't seemed to work out anywhere. To me, it's a very low risk, high reward, and so I think between Roland Wallace and Elam, I probably lean Roland Wallace, but. Look, the Chiefs have been really good about figuring it out on the field. I mean, everyone's going to get an opportunity to have some looks at training camp, so we'll just see how it pans out.
Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney is our guest. Okay, let's do a couple of throw a couple players at you, and you tell me what kind of give me an update on their status, and this of course sort of thumbnail it as we go into training camp. Josh Simmons, interesting body type. We saw him come to a media session in the last week or so, a little more chiseled than what we have seen before, and a little lighter, it also seemed to me.
Yeah, well, that is one of the important parts of the NFL scouting combine is colleges and really in the pros, once you're on the roster, they can give you a few inches of height. They can give you a few less or more pounds of weight, to make it look a little bit better. When you're at the scouting combine, you get exact reads. I mean, everyone just gets, they do the measurements. That's why they call it, unfortunately, the underwear Olympics, so you can kind of see. And Josh Simmons weighed 317 pounds at the scouting combine. He came up to the podium and said he's 285, 290. That's a lot.
That's a bunch.
That's a lot of weight, especially for an offensive lineman. He did say that he wants to be 300 by the season. So we'll see if he's having some steaks and burgers, good carbs like potatoes and whatnot. And we'll see what he looks like in training camp. But it seemed like he fell in love with working out in the gym and with weights, this off season. He didn't have to go through rehab. So you could do a little bit more of that stuff of like chiseling out and toning your body. It feels a little light. Sam wrote a good column about it, about how it would be one of the lighter offensive linemen in NFL history if he ends up, at that weight. And so remains to be seen. It is interesting in the NFL nowadays, Blair. There are some uber athletic defensive ends. So, maybe there's a case to say, like, is it better to be a little bit lighter so you can move out on your island a little bit faster and you're strong enough to block what are these monsters on the outside? But I don't know. To me, it's interesting because it feels a little light for where you want to be. I would tend to think you'd want to be in the 3 to 310 range just to have that mass.
Okay. We're recording this on Monday, the 15th of June. Tomorrow, Rashee Rice will be released from jail. And as we learned, he's getting rehab treatment for his knee while he's serving his jail time. What did Andy Reid say about him and his probability of him being ready to go by training camp?
The Chiefs feel optimistic on this. This could not have been a fun month for Rashee Rice.
No.
Fortunately for him, judge ruled that he could get injury rehab. We know he had some sort of like knee cleanup, to make sure that he was right for this season. And the Chiefs feel like he'll be ready to go. I'm not sure if that would have been the case had the judge not ruled that you can go get medical attention to get this done. But apparently, it was 10 minutes away from the Dallas County Jail. Was able to. It sounds like it's just a crazy story, but it sounds like he was able to communicate with Rick Burkholder, the head trainer. So like you have your head trainer calling it jail. Feels remember The Longest Yard, like some of these, like it's like it's crazy. But I think that the two things to note is, the Chiefs, I think, feel like he'll be ready for maybe the start of training camp or shortly into it. But the second thing, and I think the more interesting thing, and again, we led this podcast by saying like we're unbiased, so you can think about this however you want. You can either support it or be disgusted by it or neutral. It's up to you. This is just what we're saying. Like the Chiefs are still behind Rashee Rice. Like every indication has been, look, we understand that this player has made mistakes. Sometimes they say adversity, and you're just like, well, I don't know if that's the right word to be, but no matter what, it seems like he's getting what I imagine to be one final clean slate to be like, okay, you got to get it together here. And the Chiefs need him. I mean, if you just look at strictly on field, this is one of the most important non-quarterbacks on the entire team. I mean, I think you can make a case for a Karlaftis. Maybe you make a case for the defensive back, Mansour Delaney. You took him so high panning out. Other players in the conversation, but if you're going to get back to the offense, do you want to be? Maybe Ken Walker, but the primary target, the torch was supposed to be passed from Travis Kelce to Rashee Rice. That like finally has to happen this year. And so we'll see. Again, there just are a lot of elements to the conversation when it comes to Rashee Rice.
We like to say the NFL season never ends because in the off season with combine and draft and schedule release and free agency and OTAs, there's just so much activity happening in the off season. But if there ever is a downtime for the NFL season, it's starting now for the next few weeks before training camp starts. So when will the Chiefs be back, and where will they be?
Yeah, the next time we'll see this team together is St. Joseph, which is wild to say. Like, this is what I call football summer. I mean, it's night. Like, I try to really even relax here because it gets so busy once we get back. But rookie and quarterback report day, again, not open to fans, is July 24th. they'll have 3 closed practices that'll include quarterbacks and younger players, rookies. Sometimes it does include second-year players. I think that can come for 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. No practice on Tuesday, and then open to the public on Wednesday, July 29th. That will be the first practice with the entire team as they get ready to try to rebound here. In between now and then, the players are tasked with 2 things: staying out of trouble and relaxing. And the other thing is staying in shape. There's a conditioning test at the end of mandatory minicamp. You have to pass it, and then you better be in the same shape when you come back. So that includes workouts that Chiefs players can work with the organization with to get a plan, meal plans, things like that. But this is the vacation time. I mean, even Andy Reid, who doesn't really enjoy vacation too much, tries to even get away just to clear their head, because it's just such a long haul. I think the Chiefs, and if we know Patrick, Blair, like, they're driving to just go right back to the Super Bowl this year. Like, they want to wipe it away, and they want to be playing football in mid-February, and it is a long road. I mean, I just said the date, July 24th, and you have, what is that, 7 months until mid-February. So this is a time for them to reset, relax, and just make sure that mentally and physically they're ready for the long haul.
And this was even a longer offseason than usual for the Chiefs, certainly in the Andy Reid era.
You could sense a little bit of that, like, eagerness from some of the veteran players, I think, especially like Chris. You could tell, like, they're like, this has been too long. So
ready to go. Great conversation as always. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
World Cup fever is hitting Kansas City hard. Thousands of fans have flocked to town to take in the games and Fan Fest at the World War I Museum and Memorial, and it's really just the beginning. Kansas City has another few weeks of the celebration. Teams like Argentina, Ecuador, and the Netherlands, with their massive fan bases, are playing or base camping here, and that's going to give Kansas City a festive feeling for the duration. We'll have a full World Cup report next week. Rest in peace, Aldon Smith. The former Missouri Tiger All-America defensive end and Pro Bowl player with the San Francisco 49ers died this past weekend at the age of 36. As of this moment, the cause of death is unknown. Smith was a tremendous football player, but battled some personal demons that shortened his NFL career. Things had appeared to turn around for Smith, who was living in the Bay Area. On the day he died, he reportedly was delivering food as part of a charitable service. That'll do it for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and we'd love to get your feedback with a rating and review. Big thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff, producers Gabriella Lacey and Suzanne Hogan, plus editors Hannah Wise, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another edition of SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.